we got a good few questions that came in advance. So I'm just going to go through those now and I'll pose them to you. So I've grouped them just so that everybody's aware. I've grouped them by subject, and if there are any others that come in, you can pop them into the Zoom chat there to me or to Marta, and we'll post them to Orla for you. So the first question that we got was, what makes a good application, or what makes an application stand out for the fund?
I suppose a lot of groups have looked. I think you have a few sub questions on this one as well. Have you, Alannah? So if I don't hit everything, you'll help me out. Great. So I suppose what helps stand out is an evidence-based approach. You know, that you've looked at, say for example, if you've got a building and you're looking to do a retrofit or some kind of energy project, that maybe if you can, if you qualify, that you could get the SAI energy audit, that you could see that this is the right action at the right time, that you're looking to do the best thing for you as a community.
And would you be able to direct people towards getting those resources to figure out, like?
Yeah, we do. And again, once they fill in the EOI, the expression of interest on our submit page, they get directed to that straight away. But we're very happy to field any questions. And I think, I don't know if Martha has it, but we can share that afterwards.
Perfect. And then the other thing that you mentioned during the presentation was if it hits more than one theme, it also makes an application stand out. So when you're reading through applications, if someone hasn't put that in themselves, would you get back onto them and say, well, this actually touches on these topics, and support them with that?
I would help them with that, but also I would help them navigate. So, for example, again, example of the GA Club St. Vincent's there, that they did an energy project, but they also looked at their land bank, and they also then worked to improve biodiversity, and even, so many different themes or ways that trees and that help in an urban area. So they've looked at that themselves, and then we've helped them and supported them with that.
Perfect. No, that's really good to know. And then one of the other things, I guess, when we're all writing funding applications, we all want to touch on as many topics as possible. So I guess what I'm wondering is, how should we write the application? Should we make sure we're hitting on as many things as possible, or should we keep it short and concise, which is the most beneficial, or what supports you in the best way?
I suppose it's about communication. I don't sit on the evaluation committee. We gather knowledgeable people, and we try to take every project and communicate that on to that evaluation committee. If you're writing quite long paragraphs, the worry is that something might get lost. If you're referring to things that maybe aren't relevant, the worry is that something might get lost along the way in translation. So I suppose bullet points, being very clear in what you're doing, being very clear in how that aligns to what you're trying to do, that would probably be the best. I know it's very difficult. Sometimes people feel they have to write reams. If you're talking about governance, tell us about your governance. Tell us how you manage things, how you do your financials, that kind of thing. If you're talking about, what you want to do, just specifically tell us what you want to do, not maybe what you've done before. That would go into achievability.
Okay, perfect. No, that's really good to know. And then I guess with that in mind, how much worth is going towards the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs? Like, do you look at people ticking off the SDGs as a requirement, or would it be more important that they tick off things that are relevant to City Council, like the climate action document that you have in City Council?
I'd say I think these applications are difficult enough for community groups to fill in. While the SDGs are very important, there's no criteria there for you to refer back to the SDGs or any other framework. I'd say as well is that this the Community Climate Action Fund, this piece of work, is an action underneath the Climate Action Plan. So just by applying for this, you are referencing our Climate Action Plan. My goal would be for people to do the least amount of work and get the highest amount of impact. So I don't want you to do more work than is necessary.
I think that's music to every fund applicant's ears. So yeah. Just to answer the questions that are on the fund, there's no need to go to any long-winded stuff about SDGs. Perfect, yeah. Good to know. And then, is there a maximum number of projects that one group can submit? And if so, how many small and how many large projects can they do?
Okay, so the maximum amount of projects that a group can submit is one. They can submit one application. Okay. They could have multiple projects underneath that. For example, they could have a community energy project and a biodiversity project that's happening on their site or happening with their communities. The other question that might be maybe inherent in that one is that, yes, you can work with other communities. So you would need to have a main applicant who would be, taking the kind of the leadership on it, and then you would mention, there's actually space for that, you mention the other groups that you're working with. If you look at the Mayfield application, you'll see that was a large, what you would call like a consortium of groups in Mayfield, and that really helped them to help them to deliver on that project.
Okay, so just so that I understand that fully, if, let's say, Orla's community centre, Alannah's community centre, and Jonathan's community centre were all very close to each other and wanted to do something and put in one application together, we'd choose one of us to write the application, but we'd mention the others, and they could be like different parts to the same project.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And those sub-applicants, Jonathan and Orla, they couldn't be a main applicant on another application. They would have to make a choice, or they couldn't make their own separate application. That's very important.
Okay, no, I didn't realise that. That's really good to know. Perfect. And then someone submitted the question saying the guide, referencing the guide to the fund, I think it's up on the City Council website, says that we have to be a member of a larger organisation like the Wheel or a member of the PPN. If your group is not a member of either of these, how would that, or does it impact your application?
I suppose it's a reference point. It's not black and white. Again, if you ever have any worries about that, you just shoot us an email or send us a message over submit. For example, if you're a CLG or a charity, that means you are you have a you are part of a wider community. You've been approved for that structure. If you're a CLG, or sorry, if you're an unincorporated association, that's a little bit more difficult. But most people are part of some sort of network, whether the local litter picking group and they connect with the GAA club and the local school. There is a network there within which you exist. So I suppose it's in some ways is again, that comes from central government. I think it's some way for them to ensure that you're not just making yourself up and that you do exist. So I think it's a little bit of insurance that the central government have put in.
So it's kind of related to just governance, to making sure, that it actually
making sure
exists.
you exist. So that, and the PPN proves that, when you get approved for membership. I suppose if you think about Cork City, it's really tiny. I think, relatively speaking, four of us could fit into one Cork County Council's area. So, and then they've got islands. So I think when you have to consider other local authorities and who they're writing this for, whereas we can just go out the road and see you there. It's a little bit different in Cork City. We've a little bit more use of access to our communities.
Okay, that's good to know. And then this, I guess, links into the previous one about governance. So if a CLG is not yet constituted, does this need to be done before the application is submitted, or can this be done before the funds are released? I mean, assuming that they are approved for the fund.
Okay, so this is one of those great questions, and it comes back to everything. Every application is evaluated on its own merits. There's not like a black and white answer on some things. There is a black and white answer on. I can tell you that no, we can't fund those because we know central government have told us that. In a case like this, if you aren't constituted as a CLG, that might look to an evaluation committee. An evaluation committee or central government, they may worry about that. That might kind of raise a flag around that group. If you're an unincorporated association already and you've been operating for a long time, but you want to move into being a CLG, well, you have a history of delivery. You have a history of being an organization. That's not so difficult. I think, again, partnership is really good on this. For example, if there is an organization in the city that aligns with your values, sometimes it is better to operate as a hosted project underneath that group. They have their bank account, they have their child protection, they have all their policies and projects in place, and it's often finding a group that you could work with that maybe could host you, which might in the short term, at the bare minimum, I think might be a good way to go with a project like that. So it's one of those, give Orla a shout, let's chat about it. Yeah.
So we'll definitely be sharing the climate action email after this. So any great questions can go straight to that email, and the team at City Council can support with that. So then we got a few timeline, budget, cash flow type questions. So we'll do those next. So when will groups hear back about their applications, and when will funding be allocated if they are successful?
So the fund will close on the 22nd of December. We didn't set that date. I have absolute utter sympathy and empathy for everybody filling these in. That was set by central government. We will then in early February send those projects off to Dublin. They will then do another assessment, which takes around 4 to 6 weeks for them to come back to all the local authorities. And then at that point, we'd be notifying people. We'd be looking at some time in kind of between April and June to go into kind of signing of contracts and moving forward. And then from there would be 18 months to deliver. So that would be December 2027 when the end date would be for the projects. No, it would be October, I think.
Okay, so apply in December, you'll find out sometime around April-ish, probably, heavy on the ish next year, and then after that there'll be 18 months to deliver the project from the date that you hear. Exactly. Perfect. Okay. And then in relation to cash flow and budgeting, if there are several steps to a project that a group is undertaking, does the group have to have all of the funding cash upfront, or can they receive funding after each stage in case they need to fund the next stage of the
We
project?
and this is one of those places where central government has listened to a lot of feedback from community groups. So this is one of the reasons the project is the funding term is over 18 months. That gives you an opportunity within that to deliver on one part of the project. And so if you look at some of our very large projects that maybe have got up to 100,000 in this time, I think we've two who've gotten those higher amounts. They have done one project, gotten a refund, done the next part of the project. So you can work, and we will work to support you around your cash flow. We try to get funds out to people as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, there are some technical difficulties, but yeah, we do our best to get the funding back out to people as soon as possible. So it reduces down your financial burdens and cash flow issues.
Okay. No, that's really good. And I guess the next question links in with that. And I think you've almost answered it there. Um, is this fund like the SEAI funding where you only receive the funding after the project is complete? So does it work on a drawdown basis? So
Yeah, it
you kind
works
of
on
answered
a
that.
yeah, it's a voucher only expenses fund, and that makes it a little bit more difficult. But I think again, one of the bits of advice I give to communities is that they should do what's sustainable for them.
Okay.
But sometimes we look at the big ticket items and we think we'll apply for the largest amount possible. We'll go to town on this. You have to look at what's achievable for you. Again, that comes out in your application. So if 100,000 is going to do damage to you and your organization and your committee, you should look at doing what's going to work for you in that 18 months rather than overstretching yourself. Do what's sustainable for you as a community, you as volunteers, you as staff.
Yeah, I think sometimes in community groups, I mean, even at PPN, we look at funding and we're like, take as much as possible, but it can be really difficult to spend it all within an allocated amount of time. So I think it's really important for groups to remember that as well.
And
Um,
it can cause a lot of internal stress and
yeah,
difficulties for people. So I think it's to kind of think about those. And it's been really interesting working with groups over the last couple of months. Is like I do highlight that. I do say that a lot to people. And I always say is go big and then start to figure out what might work for you. You know, don't like have the whole blank canvas, put everything up there and then figure out what works for you as a group.
nice. I like that one. Okay, so a few more funding questions. If a project is unsuccessful for this fund, are there other funds that we can apply to? Very broad.
Very broad. There's lots of other fundings out there, and I don't know whether you qualify for those, so that's the difficulty. And I'll do my plug now. You should join the PPN. So
Thanks, Orla.
no worries. So every month they do a funding digest. I went out to visit Dave in Sundays Well Rugby Football Club, and he had joined the PPN because he saw it as part of this community climate action program the first time out. And he
Hey.
said every month, he said, when that email comes in, I scour it. He said at the phone, I scour it, he said, for the next set of funding, whether it might be applicable to us. I know there are particular streams of funding, but not everybody's going to qualify for those. So I think if I went into detail on that, I think it might do a disservice to people on the call.
Perfect. So sign up to our PPN newsletter, and also Marta puts up all the funding that she finds out about on the link tree as well. And I actually swear I didn't put that question in there. It came from a member in the audience. So then, does City Council keep a record of the groups that applied for this funding? And if they are unsuccessful, do you pass the application on to a different directorate that has funding the application may qualify for?
It's an interesting question. We have a central submit system. I have been told at a meeting a couple of months ago by a community member that they think it's one of the best ones out there, which is really interesting to hear. You don't normally hear that we're doing something good. So I suppose submit is with the reason why we use submit is because it is GDPR compliant and it is auditable. So that leads to transparency. I'm not going off on one kind of giving somebody advice that I couldn't give to everybody else. It keeps us all honest. It's a system there that helps. However, what you put up there, I suppose for yourself, if you put something up there, it means that if you could use that wording in another application, so you could open up the two windows beside each other and copy and paste things in, it would make your life a lot faster. And I suppose internally, like I would connect up with other funding funding sections in here inside City Council. So we do mention things, we do highlight, and I would say community section would mention groups to me that they've seen that they think would have an applicable project, and they've supported quite a lot. They got out, very early on, they got out our expression of interest, and they highlighted the SEI energy audit to people quite early in the year. So that was done by the community section here in Cork City Council. So we do work together, but every fund, a lot of the funds we deliver on are funded by central government, and they make the rules and we deliver on the projects. We don't have a say over how those projects are delivered on, and every project will have a different evaluation criteria. And again, that was set down by central government. And our job here is really just to help you shine and help you do the best you can to make that application. So that's our job.
Okay, so no, informally, yes, it does happen, but no, the same application can't just be applied to a different fund because there might be different criteria, so you will have to reapply. But if people know about it, sometimes they will mention other funding to you.
Yeah, but writing is rewriting, and to use an environmental term, you can compost a lot of your previous applications and use them to,
Big fan
to
of
let
that.
yes.
Okay, another funding question. We spend under €10,000 per year, thus we can't apply for SEAI funding. What can we do about it?
Okay, so I would say there's a lot of the Community Climate Action Officers, the relevant councils have highlighted this as an issue through any areas we can. Again, like the previous question, we carry out policy, we don't change policy. Policy is changed by citizens. Policy is changed by citizens who work with our PPNs. Again, another plug there, their local councillors, their TDs, and they raise it up. There's only so much we can do. So we would ask that, if you're coming up against this, sports clubs get it automatically below 10,000. So to me, it doesn't seem like a huge thing to get changed. So, but again, there's only so much we can do. I would suggest is that's something that you need to probably work with your networks to kind of get changed.
So maybe join the PPN and we can write to central government, see if we can change something this way.
And also when Climate Conversations comes out from the Department of Climate, Energy and Environment, it would be a good time then to raise this up.
Okay, no, that's a good point. We'll definitely put it in our submission. And then this was another question that came in kind of in relation to SEI as well, but the grant as well. When applying for solar, is a group also eligible to apply for SEAI grants? And with this in mind, are the SEAI grants awarded in addition to the fund, or are they awarded instead of the fund?
Okay, so there's no your number one, and just avoid this at all costs, as anybody doing any work at all, applying for grants ever, there is no allowing, you are not allowed to have duplication of funding on any fund that you get from central government or anywhere like that. That could be public funding, that could be city council funding, that could be central government funding. Avoid that at all costs, avoid any chance that could happen to you, because if it is found, you will have to repay central government. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants that for a community group in Cork City or anywhere around the country. So I suppose with these projects, if you get 12,000 from us for your solar panels, and you get 2,000 from for solar panels from your grant, your non-domestic microgeneration grant, that just leverages the funding you get from us. So that's it, so you end up that you can get that money, but you can't use this and have it cross over each other. Does that make sense? I don't know.
A complement, like how the Law Pro worked in that example in the railway park.
It came in, that did a separate item. But I suppose with this is you're still doing your solar panels, but it's like, if you got 12,000 from us and you knew that you were going to get this non-domestic microgeneration grant, you can then say maybe you get 14,000 euros worth instead of 12,000 euros worth of panels. So it leverages it, to use financial jargon.
Okay, I gotcha. And again, I'm assuming that you can explain that to groups who maybe
they should be looking at that when they get their quotes. They should be entering that into their application.
Okay, perfect. So then we had a few questions that came in relation to specific projects. We've made them anonymous, but general gist is there. So can our group apply for installation / upgrading lights / heating through this fund?
Yes, they can.
Yes. So this question is in relation to behaviour change measures to encourage active travel. So there's two parts to this, so we can answer the first one first. Will advocacy and promotion of climate change be eligible for funding?
No, it's not eligible under this funding. I suppose when you look at there was two strands of this funding, which was strand 1 and strand 2. Strand 2 was learn by doing, which was advocacy and learn by doing. This fund is the capital funding, because this was what was asked for by community groups. They've been separated into two projects. So if they were to give money from from this fund into the capital fund, it would be duplication of funding for the same action. So promotion, advocacy, that kind of thing is not allowed.
Okay, so then the follow-up to this was many advocacy groups do not have a premises or upgrade options for investments such as solar panels or heat pumps, etc. So how would these types of groups avail of the fund?
These kind of groups can work with local communities who do have access to solid, tangible spaces. I suppose as a person in my job, what I have done is I've used evidence-based information, such as what's the best kind of bike rack. I've helped people with that kind of thing. So those groups could actually be offering their expertise. I would say is like if I go to a venue and we use fleet bikes here in Cork City Council, electric fleet bikes. If I go to a venue and there's no bike rack, it makes it difficult for me to go to that event, to that space, if there isn't sufficient bike parking. So I suppose when you do install these things, it acts as a pull to that space. It makes it easier for people to use active travel. So I suppose that's that space where it is behavioural change and it is climate action, but maybe you could offer expertise and support and be in partnership with those groups to help them with their application.
Okay. And then we have another group with us who are interested in developing a sensory garden, and they would like to develop a sustainable development goal, so an SDG trail as part of that garden. For this type of project, can a group apply for funding for both elements of the project separately? So I guess the first element being the sensory garden and the second element being the SDG trail.
So it'd be a very difficult one for me to answer that. I'd need to talk to the group themselves. I would say is we can't fund sensory gardens. We can fund biodiversity and access to food. Every garden is the sensory experience. So for me, it would be like, well, let's support pollinators and access to food through what you're doing. With regards to the SDGs, I don't know what that would look like. If that was something like just signage that was promoting the SDGs, again, that would come under awareness raising. So they might have to seek funding elsewhere or to use their own reserves for that or fundraising.
So that group should get in contact with Orla to discuss further. And then they had a follow-up question to that, which I think is applicable to a lot of the projects here. So they also want to know if they can apply for an unspecified amount of funding for future upgrades / maintenance of these projects.
No, they can't. In order for an evaluation committee to look at what you're presenting to them, they have to look at it under a value for money heading. It's not like, as you say, I think it's 10% in the evaluation. So it's not huge, but they do need to be able to get sight of it. We can't send up to government, central government, we can't send up a kind of a random, we think it'll be this amount. Yeah, they and you need to have backup information as well for the money that you're putting in. So if you've got a budget there, you're putting in 5,000 for a garden, you'd need to have screenshots of where you've got those prices from so that you can develop a budget line. You're looking to answer, when you're doing the application, you're looking to hit those 6 topics, impact and relevance and impact and all those other ones. But your primary thing you're looking to do is develop your budget lines and have those be evidence-based.
Yes, it's good to know that our taxpayer money is going towards good things, and it's all
we'd get in big trouble if we didn't. So
then another group here is looking at a project in relation to rivers. So the group has several parts of this project that they would like to use funding for. One is to pilot a novel approach to river cleaning and resource use, and another aspect of it is to develop a sculpture that would be used as an engagement tool for the project. So can this fund be used to realise / fund each aspect of this project?
Another great example. So the first part of the project sounds really innovative. We do get a lot of applications for community energy. It is fantastic. But for me, I always feel like biodiversity is the poor relation in relation to this project. Even though, most projects did some element of that, I still feel it sometimes gets left behind or is a lower order priority for people, understandably, because people want to save money on their electricity bills. So this sounds like a really great project. For example, like when we're doing cleaning the rivers, places that maybe aren't necessarily thought of first and foremost, so that would definitely do well under innovation, for example. The second part I do not know. That is one of those ones, whereas I would say, from the perspective of listening to that, it should be presented and it should be put in. What I would say is it might step over into awareness raising and it might get flagged by central government. But I would work with that group to support them on that.
Okay, perfect. Well, we should get in contact with you. So we have another group that want to install EV chargers and wastewater treatment for their group / organisation on the premises. Are these projects eligible in this fund?
So the EV charger definitely is, and you should try to seek, you should try to get quotes for that. I don't know what wastewater treatment means. Sometimes and I'll tell you about yesterday on a call with a group. I spent 10 minutes talking about green roofs, and I discovered that they weren't actually trying to do a green roof. They were trying to do a rooftop garden. Sometimes I say one thing and you say one thing and we understand them, and I just don't know what that is until I actually chat to you and I realize I've totally misunderstood what you were asking. So I don't know on that one. That would be another one where they should make contact with me early.
Then we have another group planning to apply for a large grant to install complementary suite of supports, including efficient windows, efficient lighting / ceiling, internal walls insulation, and PV panels. In combination, all of these would have a really good impact. But as this group is building in a conservation area, they need to get a conservation architect's report, and this costs about approximately 3,000 upfront to get the specification for the windows, and that's very expensive / unaffordable for this group. So what this group wants to know is if they remove the windows from the application but keep all of the other elements, so that's the PV, the walls insulation and ceiling / lighting, would this still be considered a strong / justifiable as an application?
I mean, it sounds like they're looking to do a lot. I would say is to refer back to the Blackpool project, which just did one very small, front door. It was a big project to, it's challenging enough to get something like that over the line, but that has had quite a large impact. And I think the kind of the hashtag, every action matters. So like it is important that we do these things. And sometimes again, if it is this project sustainable for you right now as a community group? Hopefully yes, and that shows that you're looking at achievability within it.
Perfect. So throw the application in, what I'm hearing anyways.
If you're not in, you can't win, as the man says.
Words to live by.
Yeah.
So is upgrading existing halogen floodlighting fixtures to LEDs eligible for this fund? I'm assuming this is a sports
that has been funded in the past. Yeah.
Perfect.
I would say so anybody doing a large community energy project would want to be thinking, and if they have the land bank, they should be thinking about biodiversity or some other elements on site.
Perfect. So that links in past projects. So onto the past projects question. So if another group is doing the same project as us, or if the fund, has funded something similar in the past, can a community group still apply?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that just shows its precedence that it worked. Any of the examples I showed you, like some of the examples I showed you earlier on, they were funded, but they didn't actually happen in the end. So I would try to say, yes, these are things that were funded, even if they didn't come to pass. There's nothing wrong with that. But maybe the group took a turn and went for something maybe that was more applicable to their work.
Okay. And then speaking of groups that were funded in the past, how do we find out about groups that have been successful in the past, and how can we connect with them?
So I suppose if you have a look at our webpage, we have a document up there of all the projects that were funded in the past. If you know any of those groups, you could reach out to them and make connection. What I would say again is this is that difficult space where, like, you're now in the last kind of month before the application has to go in. It can be a lot of work to reach out to people. What I would say, again, I will plug the PPN, is go to networking events you get invited to. If you apply for this fund, we would see you as a climate action leader. You're an early adopter. So if we invite you to events, opportunities, please do come. That example of Maria from Green Spaces for Health and the St. Vincent's Group coming together, those things happen because of connection. They happen because you go to that event on a wet, cold Thursday night in winter, So I know it can be very difficult to make time for those things, but it's the only way. Those kind of collaborations only come about through connection.
Okay. And then we just had a question into the chat there, so I'll read it out. So what if a proposal for a project is about collaboration between the city and county organisations? So if an organisation, I guess, is spread within the city, local authority boundary, but also the county, how does that work? Can they still apply to the city fund?
You can only apply to the city for city projects, and to the county for county projects. You'll need to separate those two applications. We can't do a cross-border piece. It's very specific in the fund that it's for the local authority area.
To know. If anybody else has any other questions, you can pop them into the chat now, either to myself or Marta, and we can ask Orla on your behalf. Otherwise, if you can't think of any now, or it's all been very overwhelming, don't worry. We have recorded this and we'll be sharing it with all of you. It'll also be available on there'll be a link for it on the PPN website, and we'll share it with Orla and Jonathan and City Council as well, so they'll also have access to share it out to their groups. Marta, can you see any other questions coming in there? I'm going to take
No
that as
other
a no.
questions at the moment, and I saw a hand raised there. Maybe if they can write it to you in the chat, please.
Perfect. So we don't actually have, in this call, people aren't actually able to unmute themselves. So we're posing all questions through the chat. So if you type it in, then I can pose it to Orla on your behalf.
So one came in here. How strict it is to have the 3 quotes for the submission? Because you sort of named that. Orla, how important
that's a great question, Martha. Thanks so much. So I suppose there's a very limited time between now and December 22nd. It's also a really awful time to ask community groups to do applications because you're now in reporting period for the year funds. So what I would say is there's a certain amount of reasonableness involved in this. So under 5,000, you should seek 1 quote. Above 5,000, between 5,000 and 50,000, you should seek 3 quotes. I need a budget line to evaluate the project. I need to be able to present a budget line. So if you manage to get 1 quote, that would be acceptable between 5 and 50,000. However, if you were successful in getting funding, you would need to go out at the beginning of that project once you got the nod and do full procurement on that, i.e. seek 3 quotes. If it's above 50,000, I know this is a horrible thing to say, you do need to use e-tenders, which is, I shudder at the thought of it, but yes, you do. And 2 groups had to do that with this round of the funding. So I think there's reasonableness. I think it's, I think if somebody was to kind of like put themselves under too much stress or too much pressure to try to obtain those quotes between now and Christmas. And what's very important in public procurement is the word seek. You seek 3 quotes. You might not be able to get 3 quotes. So you should keep a record of your seeking, i.e. the emails you've sent to people.
That was, you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, often I find sometimes when you're procuring for a certain amount, people won't even give you the quotes. So does that count?
Yes, that counts.
Yes, that counts. Okay, any other questions?
Sorry, just one last point on that. Even though, say, we only need 1 quote under 5,000, if something you put in appears wildly off from what other people are putting in, or the knowledge we've done a lot of this over the last couple of 18 months, 2 years. So you should do a little bit of due diligence, because it could count against your markings if you put in something like a thing that's 2.5, you put in 2,500 for an item and you can actually get it online for 700. That's not going to look good. So do your due diligence, a few screenshots, have a bit of a Google search. Again, this is a difficult one as well, as for example, if you were getting gardening equipment, and I can talk to you about anybody about this further. If you're getting gardening equipment like shovels and blah, 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 and all these things, you can put that into say a reputable gardening company in Ireland. You can put all of those things in and get a total and a screenshot of that total. You don't have to get every individual item from different places. Does that make sense to people? Because that's a lot of work. So you can get your shopping list and screenshot that with the totals. Does that help?
Okay. Yeah, no, that does help. Yeah. And I was going to ask, can you do that? Yeah. So then another question we got into the chat is it okay if you end up not doing everything you got approval for?
Within the project scope, we have this thing called change control. So if you have been awarded the funding and maybe you're working through a project and you realize some part of it just was either not achievable, it wasn't the right thing to do at the right time, there is an ability to change that, to reduce budgets down. There's no there's no penalization for that. That's actually like a sign of kind of a maturity, that you would go, oh, you know what, this isn't working for us. That's never held against you here in Cork City Council, that you would, you might need to change your mind on something. And sometimes what has happened is people have been allocated funding for one thing, and when I've worked with them a bit closer, we've realized that isn't the right action at the right time. And we've changed that. And that's even, I mean, we can give out about central government all we want, but they have the ability to kind of adapt and support us to adapt a project after the effect. If something has emerged that it just wasn't right. So never feel bad about that. Just if you get funded, contact me early if you see any kind of obstacles coming up on the agenda.
Perfect. I guess what I'm hearing from that, and I always tell people, is if Orla doesn't know about a problem, she can't help you or support you with that problem. So
it's lovely that you're saying that when I'm not around. Thank you, Alannah. It's really helpful.
No worries. Any other questions? No, I think that's everything. Is there any last minute things that you'd like to add, Orla?
No, I suppose it's really get in touch early. There's no wrong questions. There's things I don't have any control over. Like I'd love to be able to fund certain things like EV cars are not funded under the fund. White box, electrical equipment like in the kitchens and things like that, they're not funded. There's certain things that just aren't, and that was decided by central government. And I know it can be very frustrating for groups, but we do have to just deliver on the fund as it was designed, and we have seen amazing things happen over the last 2 years with this project, with this fund. So I think it's a really it's a really positive space when you do get stuck in. It's a bit difficult filling in these applications, but we do try to help you, and I will try to help you if you can get your application in as early as possible. And if I see any issues, I will let you know and feedback.
Perfect. And with that in mind, what email should they use to contact you? I mean, we'll send out all of this information to those who are present today, but just...
So it should be climateactionfund@corkcity.ie. So that's climateactionfund@corkcity.ie. Equally, they should go onto our webpage. I think Martha's already shared that. They should go onto our webpage and express an interest. Don't spend a lot of time on the expression of interest. If you have, you might be able to use some of that in your main application. That just gets you into our main application. Unfortunately, we designed it that way. We didn't realize that you'd have to go through one to get to the other. So unfortunately, you have to go through. So just basically, the most important thing in that expression of interest is things like, I want to put solar panels on my roof, bullet points, let me know, because that way I can, when I ring you and we have our first chat, I can talk you through any issues that might arise.
Okay, perfect. So EOI, contact Cork City Council and Climate Action Fund. And just so that everybody's aware, Martha has posted a few links in the chat there if you'd like to use them. It's links to the page on the City Council website in relation to Climate Action Programme, and then there was some people as well in the questions joining the PPN. If you're not a member and you want to do that, that could support you in your application. So you can check out the link there. And if you let us know it's to do with Climate Action Fund, we can certainly help expedite your membership if you are eligible. So yeah, you'll be able to find this recording afterwards on the PPN website. Thank you so much for everyone for coming, and hopefully you all have successful applications for the fund. Thanks, Orla. Bye.